All right, everyone, it's the Grim Lord here, and this is Grim Interviews. I'm doing a special episode here with Ken Jennings. For those of you who aren't aware, I did some shows with Ken a while ago, and of course, those were during a very interesting time. We were both kind of attacked by angry Karens, and I'm glad to see that's all over with. I'm glad to see you've recovered from all that, Ken. And
For the most part,
yeah,
yeah. But
for the most part, right. I mean, my channel gone. I mean, I've got that little comics channel, but I'm never gonna have what I was because I know those Karens were reporting me like crazy, and that was it. Uh,
I mean, at this point, you're probably good. I don't think they care about being like a little bit. I see my name occasionally,
mm-hmm.
like when I BTFO'd Critical K today.
Yeah.
Outside of that, they don't really care about me anymore because
Okay.
that whole case that was being discussed is all long gone and shit went to the wayside. And
Yeah.
oh well.
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, it is what it is. And I noticed you're also streaming on Rumble. Well, you're not streaming. You're posting videos on Rumble. Yeah.
trying, yeah, my channel syncs to Rumble. I'm starting to stream to Odyssey some more to kind of
Yeah.
diversify my investments in streaming platforms. Because I'm not I'm not ignorant to the fact that I could be targeted again, just like Nick was targeted,
Right.
and
Absolutely.
my channel goes away. So I would like to not have that because, believe it or not, I like my channel.
Oh
Not
yeah.
even for the money.
Absolutely.
I like just having the platform to,
Hmm.
you know, kind of, it's my coping mechanism. It's the way I have my self care.
Okay.
Spend a few hours on once or twice a week just streaming about whatever the fuck I want, and
Yeah.
it's how I center myself basically. So
Oh yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm all for that. I mean, when I do my rant videos and things like that, that's me just getting out a lot of steam. Of course, I've been having real bad ear ringing in one ear, so it's been hard to sleep, and I haven't been getting very good sleep. So I'm not near as animated as I normally am. Uh,
yeah, that's
but
not fun. I hope
yeah,
you get better.
yeah, I don't know what's happened. I guess I've got to go see a specialist, but it happens when you start getting a little older. Anyway, we're going to talk today about some games. I've talked briefly about these kind of games, but there was one thing that I noticed in one particular game that is known for it has a reputation for being extremely degenerate. And but I noticed something in this game, Ken, that hit me on a psychological level because I have been studying just a little bit of psychology and about hypersexuality and things like that, and I noticed these themes dead on, and I'm like, oh my god, they put this deliberately in here to kind of show what happens when you hypersexualize somebody. And there was one route particular in the game because these games have different endings. And it wasn't the true ending to the game, but even the true ending to the game suffers from the same hypersexuality. And I mean, this developer, I don't know that much about him. Some of these developers and writers, they like to kind of be secret. It's Japan. They don't want to, they don't want to expose who they are and stuff like that because it's kind of more of a private thing over in Japan. Same thing with the voice actresses; they'll never tell you they did a role in this kind of material because it's still kind of taboo in Japan, despite what many may think of the country. So the game basically it's a common thing. The game is called Starless, and I think I don't know if I said that, but it's called Starless, and it was created in about 2006, so it's fairly old, but again it has a reputation. It was released by Jazz, so I mean if this interests you, you can pick it up. I don't know if it's on sale or not, but and I'm talking about the audience. I don't know if you probably wouldn't be in that into this one, Ken, but um basically what happens is there's a young man. He's trying to get a summer job because he wants to buy a car, and he's looking around in the. I mean, this is a little older era, so he doesn't like have his cell phone out. He's basically looking at what they have, job magazines, where people post offers for different jobs. So he finds this one, and they're offering him about 4 million yen for a 2-week job, and 4 million yen is quite a lot of money over there. So that's
Yeah.
yeah, that's insane. That's a ridiculous amount of money. And he's like, "Oh, I can buy a car with that kind of money. That's nothing." And basically, they said all you have to do is, be a butler, do like stuff to help out in this Mamiya mansion. So he's like, okay, yeah, this sounds like it might be worth doing. So basically, he gets in the car, they drive him off, and the the taxi driver says, these people, these Mamiyas, they're referred to as like demons, and he said, but I've heard it's just folklore. It's probably nothing to worry about, right? So, he gets in the
Hmm.
mansion. He gets in the mansion, and all of a sudden, they start asking him regular questions. I mean, they're very cordial. They're very elegant, rich people. Like, they're really stuffy. And these people, they're so rich that money just means nothing to them. They just. So basically, he goes in there, and all of a sudden, they start wanting all these sex tests. They test him through everything you can think of. Just every sort of the amount of ejaculations, the speed of ejaculations, just absolutely ridiculous things. And he doesn't know what the hell is going on. But they basically get him in a state of mind where he signs the contract, and he's theirs for 2 weeks. Now, what happens is he and this other girl, who is also the same kind of person that he is, undersexualized, probably has had no sexual encounters with men at all. They're both young people. And they basically are both subjected to extreme sexual well, it's hard to say if it was trauma or torment. I mean, they're basically doing what they would call sex tests. And of course, Marie, who runs the mansion, she's telling them, "Oh, if you do these tests for us, we will teach you how to pleasure people. You'll be the best at sex there ever was. Wouldn't you?" They basically say, "Wouldn't you love it if your partner just, you know, you were the best at sex ever because of what we're teaching you here." But they're teaching them crazy things like anal related stuff, like how to hold in. It's crazy what they're telling them to do. Like they'll pump them full of enema, and then they'll have them wear an anal plug, and they're like, you can't, okay, you can't get that out. You may want to remove that, but you can't. You have to push that out. And it's really crazy how far they take these people. And there is one ending that they do particularly in this game, where, well, let me talk about the party, because all this stuff happens. They go through all these weeks of torture, and then they have the party, and the party is this huge event where they auction off people to extremely rich, just the CEOs and the businessmen. They're basically, place your bids. You can vote on this if you want to take this person home, and have them be your sex slave, basically. Just really corrupt, rich people, that kind of eyes wide shut kind of thing. But what really got to me is after all this, and one of the endings, there's an ending called the Black Tape Letter. And this is very important because this is one where he leaves the mansion. He leaves the mansion on good terms. Nothing happens. Like, they don't try to keep him there. He just leaves the mansion. He goes back to his apartment, but he can't take the woman because he becomes attached to the woman. And the reason why he becomes attached to the woman is because they pretty much force them into each other. She's a beautiful woman. He's a young man. They force them to have sex with each other by putting drugs in the food that creates like aphrodisiacs. So they're basically trying to force them to have almost a traumatic bond, because they're both being put through these horrible sexual tortures, and they have no choice, because the only reason she's there is because her little brother has an operation, and she doesn't have the money to pay for it. But Marie, who owns the mansion, she owns a hospital. She says, "Well, I can have him in my hospital, and we can find a transplant, and that's no problem." And she's like, "Oh, really? You can do that?" And she says, "Yeah, that's nothing." But she finds a way to basically keep the woman in there, Meteori. She finds a way to keep Meteori in there. And of course, the young man is separated from her. And of course, they have this trauma bond because they've been having sex with each other several times at a million different ways. And these are people that don't know anything about intimacy. And they're being exposed to everything under the sun. They're being taught how to use things. They're being taught absolutely degenerate things. And now they're attached to each other. And when he basically leaves, he starts, at first he's like, okay, I'm gone, I've left the mansion. But all of a sudden, he gets a letter in the mail, and it's a DVD. And there are these old men, the rich old men I talked about, and they are going to impregnate her. And he all of a sudden gets attracted to this. And there's a point to this. He gets attracted to this, so he just loses his mind. He starts masturbating, and he feels bad about it after the tape ends. He feels guilty after the tape ends. He says, I shouldn't be doing this. Why am I doing this? Why am I getting off to something like this? It actually says in the text that he could not get off to anything normal people get off to after that. Like normal pornography, he was so beyond the pale. He was so hypersexualized from all this that regular porn video couldn't get him off. He had to have something extremely degenerate because that's what they did to him over there in that mansion. And they would send him another video. And of course she was actually pregnant, and they would do it again. And he said, they sent him 3 videos. And after the end of that, there was no more videos. And he said that he was just going to keep pining and waiting. And by the way, he stopped going to school. He stopped doing anything. He just became a shut-in that didn't want to do anything but masturbate. He chronically masturbating because that's the only thing that he could think of, and he would go and look at those videos over and over again. I mean, the guy was absolutely destroyed. And what I want to talk with you about is how do you approach somebody that's been through this kind of sexual trauma at such a young age? I mean, I know this is an exaggerated issue, but if you have somebody that comes through your door and they've been through this kind of trauma at a young age, how do you de-hypersexualize somebody? How do you fix this problem in a mental health way?
Well, it's actually a really good question. I think you can take the approach, again, I'm assuming for the purposes of this discussion that the characters are just 18 or whatever, and I think you said it was like a 2-week stay or whatever, so, young adults, so very, freshly minted adults. I think you could take the same approach because one of the things that is an unfortunate byproduct of abuse, sexual abuse in children, is sometimes hypersexualization or sexualized behaviors that aren't necessarily common.
Yeah.
For example, when I first became a guardian ad litem many years ago at this point, when it was a volunteer thing, my first case, one of the kids I was the guardian ad litem for, she was 8 or 10, and I think she was 9 or 10, because, that's almost a decade now.
Right.
Jesus, I feel old. But she was doing some behaviors that the foster parent thought was sexual. And there was, and when that kind of flag was raised, it meant that, and this is before I was a therapist, of course, so
right.
It meant raising the concerns of what was going on in the home. Because mom was a stripper, and so there was concerns that the kids were maybe exposed to that a little bit.
Yeah.
And it turned out the kid wasn't engaging in any real sexualized behavior. It was we checked it out, but kids do come out of sexual abuse situations. Because depending on what age the abuse was, if it was pre-puberty, early puberty, mid-puberty, whether it was forceful or a lack of a better way to say it. I don't want to say consensual to mean that the child can consent to that,
Yeah.
but it was not a traumatic type of abuse that can change relationship dynamics. So I would start probably at looking at that the same way I would approach someone who's gone through like abuse, in that you have a situation where someone's been exposed to or was either engaged in willingly or not, or whether they thought it was willing or not, because that's another perception, right? Because you have kids who may appear to say willingly engage in it, but they can't legally consent or cognitively consent because their brains aren't
right.
that active, so they think they can do it, but they can't. So you have that, and so they thought they were doing something that might have been okay. And there's a lot of times when dealing with that, it can kind of flip things, and if you don't do it carefully, you can take someone who's gone hypersexual and you can shut them down sexually, which the goal shouldn't be that. With dealing in, again, this would be dealing with someone. If this came to my office, I would refer it out, because the severity of it's that bad, right?
Wow.
You would want someone who focuses on, because I mean, given the example and hypothetical here, someone who's gone through that severe of a sexual trauma, that you have all these things on it, it's changed and it's impacted it impacted sexual interest, impacted for example, the ability to obtain pleasure or an erection, or to obtain orgasm, whether male or female, based on normal, say, vanilla sexual encounter to kinky, wild sexual encounter. Is if you've now shifted that border, then what does that mean? How do you pull that back? It would be a very complex. I'm trying to think of it in my head as I'm talking, like how would you approach it? Because it's not necessarily something that's so clean cut that you can just go, oh yeah, you can go step A, step B, step C, and boom, everything's fine.
Sure.
Is the way people deal with trauma. Every person deals with trauma in a different way. Right. Two people can have the same exact situation, same person. For example, say two women were raped by a man, the same guy, the same situation, same leading situation leading up to it, same time of day, same number of, same exact movements, everything's a mirror image, and the two people can process the event completely differently. Right. One, they can walk away from it and be a little okay, right, and someone can just be destroyed from that. Wow. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Well, see, the true ending to the game, spoilers, is that he basically gets out of the mansion with her, and they're both hypersexualized. So, I mean, obviously what happens is what happens. He quits school, he gets a regular job working, she basically lives with him, they're constantly having sex all the time, constantly. Because they're both hypersexualized. They said that's all they want to do is have sex, because that's the only thing that they've been conditioned to do. So, of course, she's pregnant, and he's still wanting it. I mean, it's considered to be the true ending, the happy ending, if you will. But what we're looking at here is two extremely hypersexualized people that have been conditioned to so much sex at one time at such an early age. Well, not an early age, but... at
18 is an early age.
Yeah,
if you have that level of sexual intensity at such an early age, even at 18, even going into, because when you think about it, and people tend to forget this, sex is a primal biological function. Right. The brain, it's a core level. We eat, fuck, and sleep, right? It's simple, in simple terms. The brain will do, because there's a reason sex feels so good, to make sure we reproduce, because we go, wow, that feels really fucking good. I want to do that again.
Right.
I want to make sure I really do that again. So it's not like, let me stick my thing in this little wet hole. Oh, it wasn't that great. I'm not going to really do it again. So sex is extremely pleasurable to make sure we do it to keep the species around. It sounds stupid, but it's kind of the reason for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you have people who are, even assuming some sexual, say one or two sexual partners during puberty, likely to not, again, given today's youth and access to internet,
Yeah.
maybe it's gone a little bit further than vanilla sex. Maybe you've tried a few kinks. Maybe you're just like a 4 or 5 on kinkiness.
Right.
But to go from that level of sexual activity to the trauma level of sexual activity you're talking about here, that would require probably years long therapy to actually finally get through it. You might get because therapy is a relative thing. Each person goes through therapy, and some people's small steps are bigger than other people's big steps.
Sure.
And so it's what makes the bigger difference for you in the short, medium, and long term. So if that person's coming in and presenting with the symptoms you're talking about, the hypersexuality, the limited ability to, orgasm or achieve erection or to self-lubricate to certain stimuli, then if they're not able to have a functional, healthy sexual relationship and that's causing distress, then that might be the thing you focus on first. Or say the sexual trauma makes them seek out wanting to do the same thing to other people. So then it's maybe controlling from the safety side of things so that they don't do something forcibly in another person. There's a bunch of different, again, it would depend on how that person walks into the office and goes, here's what happened to me and here's how it's impacting my day to day.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, all diagnostics will basically go back to when you do a diagnosis, how it impacts your home, work life, and social life. So how does this impact that person's home, social, and work life? Would be my questions.
I mean, exactly. From what I said, the first case, the first ending, it greatly impacted it. He quit. Now the most interesting thing that I noticed from that ending is the first couple of weeks, he said he started to feel better. He was going back to school and attending classes, and the first thing I was like, well, maybe that's a good thing, because being around other people, maybe getting his head straight, sometimes you just need to be around other people. However, it all fucked up when he got that letter. He got that first letter, and there was actually times where he was regretting. He said, maybe I shouldn't open this letter. Maybe I shouldn't. And that probably would have been the best choice. I still say that having just left that alone and left everything in that mansion be, and I understand they had a traumatic bond, so I can't understand, I can't, I don't know what that's like for two people that have been through trauma. I don't know how deep that bond is. But I'm saying, as a man personally, I think it probably would have been better to let her go and kind of just let everything that happened be as it was. You escaped. You escaped that trauma. You're out of it. Now try to move, try to live on. And it said he was getting better. So, as far as this is just my, not having any experience in this field. But what I would say is the first thing you do is you talk to a therapist, you talk to somebody that, hey, I've been through some very, very, harsh trauma. I'm not really sure what to do. I can't talk that much about it because apparently the people that were in that party, some of them are connected to police and stuff like that. So you can't really trust the police to kind of do anything about it. But what he could do, is again, talk to the people that would help him out. Hey, how do I deal with this, process this, something like that. Because just knowing that he said he was getting a little better after a couple weeks of just being out of the mansion and going back to school and resuming life as normal, that means that there was actually hope. But as soon as he got that letter, that's when everything changed. That brought him back into the trauma. That brought him back into the mansion.
Well, you'll have things that, you hear people use the word trigger a lot online as a joking term about different social issues, but you do have people who go through trauma and do have different triggers, and those can be sights, sounds, smells, certain environments, different things can cause, like, for example, the cologne or perfume can trigger the memory of someone being raped and can cause a physiological reaction to protect them because the trauma was that severe. And so I would argue that in this situation, even though they were separated from the place for 2 weeks and then they thought they were getting better, I would argue that they really weren't. They were probably more doing what a lot of people do when they go through, whether it's depression or trauma or anything else. is they try to put everything in a box and put it up on a shelf and never talk about it again, and never really address the issues. Right? I'm just going to go back to my life. I'm going to go back to whatever I was doing before all this happened, and things will be fine. Right. And then the moment someone just tips that box over a little bit, the shit spills all out on the floor, and it can fuck you up again real quickly. That's why, in example situations like this, one of the things that people struggle to do, and it's not just because of excluding things like financial issues with being able to pay for care, or societal aspects of access to care, or limitations with how many therapists are in a given area and stuff like that. There's the fear of judgment. Even though you're going to a therapist, people still are afraid of being judged by the therapist. When you go and tell someone, I did all these weird, kinky things,
right?
Are they going to laugh at me? Are they going to treat me? Because I worked with people talking about a variety of sexual things,
right.
Both young and old.
Right.
Kids who are hitting their first experimentations with sexuality, sure, to adults trying to navigate an open relationship, or it wasn't an open relationship. I think it was the girlfriend I was doing therapy with the one boyfriend, but his girlfriend was technically married too. And so navigating the dynamics of that relationship.
Wow.
So like working with them and how their romantic and sexual relationship work. So, one of the things that really helps people is establishing that level of comfort up the gate. That's why I focused on that. So when you have someone going through trauma like this, especially sexual trauma, people are always very hesitant to mention or talk about sex. People get shamed about sex. People, growing up in a lot of cultures and a lot of communities, sex is forbidden. You're not supposed to talk about it. You're not supposed to have it. You're supposed to be a good boy or be a good girl or be a good whatever, and just not do it and wait till you're an adult and married. And so you end up in a situation like this. You get a lot of sexual exposure in a short period of time. Are you ever comfortable talking to anybody about it, even your best friend? So one of the things in that would be getting that person into the care immediately, because them getting better, it's going to be tied to how quickly they get into care and how much change you can make in a short period of time, or in a given period of time, rather. So.
Right. Now, there is this argument. I've heard it a lot from one weird thing is the incel and the white supremacists are kind of joining, which isn't something I'm surprised about, honestly, because, they're both, oh, I want babies, and the other one's like, oh, yeah, well, we want you to have babies, too, because we want, it's mostly, it's a large amount white people that I hear complaining about it, but one of the things they say is that because of the amount of pornography available, people are more degenerate, they've changed, and they said, and one thing that as you've talked to a lot of these people, these young people coming out of, I don't know, high school, college, whatever, are we having an influx of this? Are they getting crazier and wilder? Are things going more over the top than maybe back in the 90s, or maybe some times like that? Is it really ramped up sex? Is that really what's going on right now with our youth?
You're going to have people do their experimentation with sex, sure, whether it's an adult, teenager, or anything like that. Like, it's going to happen.
Right.
It's what matters as far as what's the way to phrase it? What matters is whether it's done in a healthy manner that's supportive of all parties.
Sure.
Like, you don't want to try and do something if your partner's not wanting to do it, then it's kind of forceful, not consensual. Like, as silly as some of the consent stuff you see coming from different parts of online communities, consent in sex is a big deal.
Yeah.
Because especially if you have a partner who's dealt with, because unfortunately it's like 1 in 4 to 5 girls. Well, it's like 1 in 3 to 4 girls has had sexual abuse as a child. 1 in 7 to 8. It's like 1 in 7 or 1 in 12 boys who's had sexual abuse as a child. But you're likely to run across someone in your time who's dealt with it.
Wow.
So doing it the right way, the numbers are really high, and the numbers for male sexual abuse are really low. Probably statistically given less likelihood of reporting and prosecution and shit like that. So that's a whole other topic. But
Right.
so you're still running across a lot of people who deal with, unfortunately, early childhood abuse, sexual abuse, and then you have some people start sexual exploration at a young age. That's not necessarily unhealthy. You can have, like I've had these arguments with people before. It's not uncommon for kids, toddlers, and young school-age kids to masturbate, but only because they know it feels good, not because it has a sexual connotation, right?
Right.
So, but if it becomes unhealthy, like touching yourself in public, even though you've been corrected, then that's something you address. Stuff like that, where each person, again, depending on how you grow up and your parents and how they treat those kind of situations, can either go good for you or bad for you. And then entering a situation like, the game you're describing could either work in your favor or make it worse for you at the end of the day.
Right.
Like I said, two people going into the exact same situation can walk out two totally different ways of processing the trauma. Right. So
now there is we've talked about this maybe before, but considering everything I've said and the kind of degeneracy, I mean, we're talking about a game where there's a lot of defecation. There's a little scene where he gets his penis chopped off. There's a lot of really hardcore kinds of things that go on in this game, and some people do describe it as traumatic. And as I mean, like, it's like watching, like there's certain movies that people just like that. So what I'm trying to say is there a possibility that when somebody watches this kind of really hardcore, over the top, crazy sex, I mean, and torture, can that actually do something to the brain? Is that actually able to affect a person?
I mean, you have a whole movement right now that is very anti-pornography.
Yeah.
I'm actually surprised. At how strong some of the anti-porn stuff is, given people arguing legitimately adult actors and actresses are what's the way to phrase it? That they are being trafficked even though they consented to it.
Right.
It's kind of a dumb argument, but it's whatever. And I think people were more likely to, when you have a greater act, because back when I was a kid growing up,
sure,
we could download porn online, but with dial-up, sometimes that JPEG took a little bit to load, and so you might have like the top half of the tits or whatever, and so it takes a bit for the bottom half to load. So you make do with what you have. Is a joke, but when you have at your fingertips with, literally Rule 34, you can name it, there's porn for it pretty much on the internet. Your
AI.
Unique thing that you're interested in exists to the most degree. Yeah. And that's both a good and bad thing. Okay. It's good because it helps you meet your sexual needs. Mm-hmm. Everyone's sexual needs are different.
Right.
But it's also bad because if you start feeding a lot of niche sexual desires, people will start having issues with struggling to maintain erections or being able to have, just regular romantic vanilla sex that's not involving whips and chains and, hanging people from upside down from bars and shit, or sex swing, like whatever your kinks are.
Yeah.
Like you hit a limit, you hit a wall with that to where, it's no longer doable for whatever your sexual, whether it's one partner or multiple partners, you're no longer able to healthily have a sexual relationship.
Right.
So one of the things you'll hear with both substance abuse counseling and a lot of types of counseling is moderation. Mm-hmm. That's why I don't like the all or nothing approach of like AA.
Yeah.
Because drinking a ton, alcohol is a bunch of control over your life versus trying to not ever drink again, alcohol is a whole bunch of control over your life.
Yeah.
Like, it still has control over your life because you're letting it, because you're trying so hard to never drink again.
Oh, yeah.
No, I think there's ways you could do that. It's not necessarily the alcohol having control over your life, but if, you're, and again, it's very common for young people, teenagers or young adults, to very much have a high sex drive to explore, both men and women, to explore their sexual interests and kinks. And sometimes, that it becomes a bit more. And so I'm going to try X, and then I'm going to try maybe X plus Y. And I kind of like that. So let's try X plus Y plus Z. And then you start having either a bunch of things you're interested in or some very niche kinks. So it's making sure that you're not I would say not overloading yourself on one thing.
Right.
And make sure you're balancing it on the other things. Right. I don't think that, for example, banning porn would really solve any issues, personally. I think, it would make it a forbidden fruit. It makes it more, people will still find ways to access it.
Oh, yeah.
And it becomes, you're putting people who have no different than prohibition, people who have addictions to alcohol, who now have addictions to porn, now through the black market, trying to break the law to feed their addictions. And the addiction isn't necessarily, their fault. They may have overused and didn't realize it. And so now they have this, the brain and the way, neurotransmitters and things work. It's fascinating, but it's fucking scary because you can be at the behest of dopamine and serotonin releases, and they can really control you and make you feel awful when you don't get them. You crave it so much, you're willing to do almost whatever it takes to get that rush.
Yeah.
So overdoing it will fuck you up. So I could see in a situation like this where you're kind of forced to overdo it for whatever reasons, and now you're rewiring your brain probably a little bit. How do you fix that?
Yeah. Can
it be fixed? I mean, it'd probably be, I'd have to look more into it.
Yeah.
And see how, because that's something a little, that would be something, like I said, if someone walked into my door with that, I would refer them out to an expert on maybe sexual trauma or sexual trauma and, not necessarily pornography addiction, but sexual addiction, something like that, because it's way outside of what I could probably do. Right. And I would want them to get the best care. Absolutely. Someone in that situation, that's a lot to deal with, I would think. So.
Wow. So yeah, I mean
that's my thoughts on it. So.
Yeah. That's kind of what I was thinking about with the starlet situation. And yeah, if there's somebody that comes in and they are that messed up, it's going to have to go with the utmost expert care. I mean, there's absolutely no... And the thing is, even though that is, something that's fictional, there's that situation where those women were trapped in that guy's basement for years. And God knows what they went through. I think a lot of them made it out pretty good, and they're doing better. They have their heads above water, and I think they were even given money for all the trauma they went through. But I mean, that's the kind of same situation, except this went on for, I don't know, a couple of years, and nobody knew anything about these women being trapped in this guy's house. So these are crazy things that go on in society, unfortunately, where people kidnap and sex slaves and all kinds of... I mean, it's all under the underground crap, but it goes on. They said that OnlyFans, a lot of girls that they found on OnlyFans were missing persons. People that they haven't heard from in years, and they popped up on OnlyFans, and they verified that it was the person. So kidnappers were actually using their own girls or whatever to try to make money off the website. That's frightening. That's scary. Think about how many parents thought that their daughter was gone forever. They'd already mourned the kid, and here it comes up on OnlyFans a couple years later. I can't even fathom that, And even the people that were, the BBC that was basically investigating all this, Like, they couldn't believe it. OnlyFans couldn't believe it. They didn't realize it would get that bad. I mean,
Well, I mean, you had the Pornhub purge a while back because allegedly CP being found on there, which, I mean,
yeah,
Section 230 covers the liability issues for that, but
yeah,
it's not so bad that, like, I did, you know, because now to post on there, you have to be verified. It used to be you could just upload it, whatever.
oh,
And,
yeah,
like, I know Pornhub did that because they got a lot of flack and a lot of negative publicity about it.
yeah,
Whether, I don't know, it's kind of stupid, but, I mean, at some point, it's, you know, going into that whole free speech area where, in an effort to protect people, we start overstepping our bounds a lot and trying to keep people safe from all the bad things in the world.
yeah.
And it doesn't really do anything except infringe on rights.
Oh, yeah.
So,
it's not good. No, it's not good. I mean, look, I don't care. Personally, I've said this. I absolutely abhor child porn. I've told you that. I mean, obviously, I told you about the situation with the gentleman who, I dare I call him a gentleman, the scum who, you know, did that horrible thing with his own daughters and produced that stuff. So I want, you know, I mean, I'm one of those guys. I can't even, if somebody mentions something like that, even in, I mean, I don't know why they would, but if somebody mentioned that they were actually into something like that, I'd be very angry. Like, everything, all the trauma and everything that I have went through, knowing that my former good friend did all that kind of stuff, yeah, that would all come out. You know, and then of course I have another case to report. Unfortunately, there was a friend of mine. Well, he's still a good friend, but his brother. This is basically what he did. Is basically he waited for the mother and everybody to be gone, and he told the girl, and he said we're going to basically play a little game and don't tell anybody, and his wife found out about it. And his wife asked, she was basically, I don't know if I told you this already, but she was basically, you know, giving the girl a bath, and she was drying her off, and all of a sudden she touched a certain part of the girl, and the girl made a noise, and she said, "What's wrong?" And she says, "That hurts." And she looked at that area, and that area was red and everything else, and she was pissed. They've blocked him off. I mean, I don't want to explain that whole situation, but yeah, that guy's scum, and they don't want, his brother doesn't want anything to do with him, and I don't want anything to do with him. And again, I was friends with
this guy
for years, and I'm like, why? And I say to myself, why are all these people that I knew, and you know, all these people I knew and I thought were pretty cool dudes and people, just turned into these absolute monsters? I'm like, you know, it makes me think, what's in the water? What's going on? It's so, you know, it's just not something that should be a thing. You know, as you said before, you want to mitigate as many cases as possible. Well, apparently we've got a lot of cases and we've got a lot of things that need to be fixed in society. Something needs to be done to fix this kind of behavior. And again, I do not really care for the lolicon. I know that there's people that watch my content that are into lolly. They like the lolly games. That's fine. I don't particularly like that content, but I'll respect it. Like I said, I don't care. I don't like it, but I don't want it banned either. Because I mean, there is the possibility that it could be stopping cases. It could be preventing cases. There's a very good possibility it's preventing cases. I mean, if it is, it is. I mean, if it's not, you know, it is what it is. But I know for sure that there are people that like it, and you know, a lot of the adult game servers and stuff, you see people that are open about it. And I mean, it is what it is. Now, me personally, I mean, you see this stuff when you're playing the games, and you're like, oh my god, you know, it's just like, that's not something I want to see. So, you know, I'll take my arm at the screen, you know, because I want to get on with the story. These are stories, you know, and sometimes they'll just throw this scene on there, and I'm like, oh, I don't like that character. Like, there's certain times where I can look and I say, oh, that character looks way too underage for me. Now, I'm not gonna say that it's a problem. I'm not gonna call people out, but for me personally, at my age, can't look at that and be like, oh yeah, it's just I can't do it. So I just hit the space bar, and when that scene is over, as quickly as possible, I go on with my story. That's how I do it. I've even had people tell me, hey, there's some really violent parts. Sometimes in these things, women get beaten. Like, they get beaten brutally. Like, this stuff can be really harsh to watch, as I said. And
Oh yeah.
and there was a guy that said, he said, I like the story, but this content is just too much for me, and I wouldn't care if you skipped it. And I said, to be honest with you, man, I don't like a lot of this content either. I like the story, but I don't like how, I guess we'd say, edgy some of the content can be. It's just like, ooh, that's too much, you know. I like vanilla. I like the vanilla romance. I really am that kind of guy. That's why I got into the 3D games. They're called 3D render or what AVN adult VNs. I like those better because they focus more on relationships and they focus more on vanilla sex, and even nothing goes completely crazy. The most they'll do is maybe some whips and chains. I haven't seen anything over the top, and frankly I really don't want to. I go to those games for a palate cleanser, but some of those games now, I will tell you right off, there are some themes in those games that are not sexual. And I basically explained to this guy a couple days ago. I said, what pornographic film have you ever seen where the character says, I'm dealing with depression, and then the next time you see her, she's standing on a 20-foot tall structure, and she says, life is meaningless, I'm tired of it, I'm ready to jump, and you have to literally talk her down from suicide. This is a real game called Leap of Faith that was just completed.
Damn.
Yeah.
That sounds intense.
Yeah. And you actually have to, and these aren't cartoon characters. These are more realistic looking, sometimes they say Uncanny Valley, but they're more realistic looking 3D animated, 3D models. So when you see this person, it kind of adds that impact. And of course, she jumps, but you catch her. And he says, I don't want to let go of you. I don't want you to be, because he's like, I don't want you to do that anymore. And he takes her to the hospital. And of course, when they go to the hospital, they say, we can't keep her for more than 24 hours. And he said, but what if she does it again? How can I stop this? And that's actually one of the girls that you can pursue. And when you do pursue her, you have to help her manage her depression. Like, this is a this is a really deep kind of thing. So, I mean, there's a lot of these games where, like, being a dick, where there's drug use. There's one of the characters, she's gay. One of a girl that you meet in the very beginning was actually her girlfriend, and they went to college, and they basically got to college together. But her father is a very, very devout religious man. And she has to hide her relationship and her feelings for this other girl from him, because he is not just a devout religious man. He's capable of violence. Like, he is capable of harm. You see in some of the scenes that he's not just going to accept his daughter having the relationship with another woman. And then there's another guy, and he literally looks like the Chad meme. And I think that's his name. Yeah, his name is Chad. And basically, he is gay. And you could kind of tell that because when he interacts with his girlfriend at the time, he doesn't really kiss her on the lips. He doesn't really want to touch her. The most he'll do is kiss her on the forehead. And I notice immediately, I'm like, something about this is odd. And then all of a sudden, you find out in the locker room that he's kissing this other guy, and they're in a very deep relationship. And this guy is a big alpha male. So he's one of these guys where if they found out if they found out he was gay, he'd be ruined. There's no way he'd keep up that big alpha stud status that he has if he was found out to be gay with this other guy. So there's a lot that goes on in these kinds of games, and there's a woman that that basically deals drugs in the college, and she goes through very bad situations where drug deals sometimes go wrong, and she gets abused, she gets hit. So yeah, these are the kind of games that they're making, and believe it or not, I've looked at a few of these. Most of them are on itch.io under the adult section. There's a lot more games where they have literally said, okay, if you have psychological issues, if you have mental things, stuff like that, because we talk about there's alcohol abuse, there's drug abuse, there's stuff like that. They want to actually tell a story, and they want to tell a story uncut. They don't want to do it where, they say, oh, we can't show this, we can't show that. They want to have it where it's completely realistic. And sometimes this stuff can be hard for people to watch. Because, I mean, even though it's, a game, when you're reading this stuff and you're seeing it play out, it's pretty hardcore, and you're in that role. Like, you play the role now of that character. And it's hard. Like, you have to make a decision sometime, and the decision that you make might not be, the best decision you want. It's like, well, what do I do here? It's like I can't leave her because I don't know what's going to happen to her, so it's stuff like that. And I mean, though these games have sex and they are marketed for their sexual content, when you start reading them, it's a lot of drama. It's a lot of psychiatric, psychological, I say psychiatric, psychological stuff, mental stuff like that. So they're very good. I've actually got a friend of mine that just graduated. She wants to be a sex therapist. And she's going to start looking through these games because she's played a lot of the Japanese ones, but these are on a completely different level. Not saying the Japanese ones didn't deal with children that have been abused. Alcoholic stepfather that beat his child several times. That was hard to read. So, yeah, a lot of these games, they deal with stuff that you don't even really see too much on television. So yeah, it's a lot for some people. There was one in particular I couldn't read. Well, I mean, every time I read it, it would kind of I don't want to use the word trigger, but that's exactly what it was. Like, it was hard for me to read. It was basically about this girl that was being abused by her uncle, and you'd have to go through it and basically, she's being abused. You can't do anything about it. You have to try to rally the counselor, and you got to rally the teacher. You got to rally the students. And finally, they made enough of an uproar that they got the girl out of that house. But it was terrible. Like, they would actually take their cigarettes and just push them into her face. Like, that's how they thought about her. She was just a servant for all these men. So yeah, it's hard when you read stuff like that. So, but yeah, that's.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's never easy dealing with some of this stuff. Even doing therapy, I've had clients come in and tell me things, and
yeah,
you gotta take it in stride and work with them, take them. The way I phrase it is, people come in the door, and I don't get to really, I don't pick,
right,
for the most part, what comes in the door. I take them as they are and try and work with them as it is. And some of these things, like you were saying about interests and stuff, people have different interests.
Right.
And if that's the thing that helps you, I know there's been research into. I have to look up to remember what. I think it's been a while, but there was a research done, I think, at least a decade or more ago on the impacts of loli and shota on offending rates or on CP usage rates or something like that. I think in countries like, I think it was in like Japan or something, that the usage or sex offending dropped with the legalization of loli or something like that. So there's arguments to be made about that. I don't remember the exact research off the top of my head. I'd have to find it. But, I tell people, I'm not here to, I generally don't kink shame. As long as your kink doesn't hurt another person or hurt you, that's not a non-consensual type of hurt.
Yeah.
Then you do you and however many partners, whoever or whatever you're wanting to have sex with, as long as they can consent, or it's not something that would require consent. Like, a doll, or
Right.
maybe, people into like, you have the plushy people who are into plush animals, stuffed
Yeah, I've
animals.
seen that.
You
Yeah.
know, as long as it's not hurting something, as long as it's not a thing that can require consent, like an animal or a human,
Yeah.
then you do you. I don't care what you do.
Absolutely.
Someone can come in and tell me all the kinky shit they do, and I'll just be like, cool, that's cool. I'm glad that you have things that help you, as long as it's not taking up a huge chunk of your life.
Yeah. And
Even people who've gone through trauma, sometimes, it's not uncommon. You'll see people who have, been raped or abused have rape kinks or rape fantasies. And there's several explanations for that. It gives you the ability to take back what someone took away from you. You have control over the situation,
Right.
even though it's, a role play.
Right.
Things. I'm not surprised. Like there's a lot of shit you can dig into stuff like this. Like, and then I don't know if you were watching my stream earlier. My guest Tracy, I've been exposing her to a lot of this side of the internet. I'm really wanting to get her and Dollhouse Phil on a stream together to talk about the effects of like going full MGTOW and using a doll, and whether or not, from her perspective, whether that could be harmful or healthy. Because I think her initial take would be probably could be harmful. I think if done right, it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Now, who is she exactly? For those that aren't aware, who is this Tracy? Is she another?
So she's a YouTuber who has been on my stream multiple times now. Her channel is Calming the Chaos. She's a licensed mental health counselor out in Washington State.
Okay.
She messaged me right after I was dealing initially with the Sophie stuff, where I lost my job. She had dealt with some of the Karens. We ended up having months of not talking, and then I finally had her on a stream, and we've kind of just hit it off, and she's like a great guest. It's good to have another therapist on to talk about stuff. Like having Aiden Paladin on has been amazing, because her insight in social psychology, she's not a therapist, but she has master's in, I think, psychology, and she was working on her doctorate before she was kicked out of school because of people doxing her and shit. But, she's really, Aiden's really intelligent in what she talks about. It's nice to have someone who, from the West Coast, who has some different opinions than myself, to be able to have these conversations. And we disagree on things, we agree on things, and we can get along like normal people. That's what the best part about it is. At the end of the day, we can end the stream and go back to shit talking in Discord or just doing whatever.
Well, see,
and so
there is something, because I actually used to listen to Aiden a lot, and I mean, I'll check out her stuff, every once in a while. But there were some videos she made. She made a video about the incel stuff, and I really soaked that one in. And there's a video she made about the femcell and the pill. I showed that to a friend of mine that I'd known for over a decade, well over a decade, and she blocked me. Like, it was just too much for her. I was like, man. It was the femcell and the problem of the pill. I mean, I've known her for almost 20 years, and she blocked me over that. Has not recovered. It's not Aiden's fault. But I was basically just trying to, Aiden had some very good insight on that, where she was talking about, could the pill be changing the way that women see men? And that, it was an amazing, I'd never heard of it like that. And when she explained the oxytocin spray experiment, that made me think about things in a whole different way. Just,
Aiden, whether you love her or hate her, she's pretty knowledgeable on the topics she covers. At least in my opinion. She's provided great commentary on my channel with the different subjects I cover. Because I cover such a wide range of shit anymore. I don't even know what the hell my channel's become, but it's been fun covering different things.
Great.
I like having different opinions on. I like, especially when it comes from someone, because there was supposed to be another person who was supposed to contact me. I saw in my chat one day that was like, I'm a therapist too, or whatever, and I'm like, email me, I swear to God I'll have you on. And it's like, I like having more people on who are you know, because some of these takes, I mean, I'll be the first to say I have takes that people criticize, or
Sure.
I've been called out. I've been called many things.
Mm-hmm.
Just the day before, one of the Karens who had tried to dox me was talking about me and calling me a pedophile because I covered the Sophie case, because I read documents that the documents themselves discussed the child's genitalia, not that I was doing it. You
Right.
know,
Right.
it was me reading it makes me a pedophile in every
That
situation. There's
doesn't
no
even
nuance
make any
according to her. Because
sense.
any male who does that is a pedophile according to her. So people have criticized me on that. But like I was talking about on my stream earlier, is that I know I'm doing things right, and that I don't have to worry about that when parents and kids will trust me with those types of topics, and there's
Right.
never a concern of impropriety.
Right.
That's how I know I'm doing my job right. That's how I know I'm at least trying to.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah. You're doing great things. I mean, not just in your
I
regular
try.
field, but on YouTube as well. You're getting that mental health that we needed. You're doing kind of what Nick is doing with all the lawyers and stuff. You're doing that with mental health. We need more mental health on YouTube, and we need more open mental health, and we do need mental health that disagree. Like you said, they have different opinions. That's great. We need to have different opinions. We don't need to have everybody on the same page. We need to have, okay, this is a good reason because of this is a bad reason because of that, and then the person can kind of make their own decision as to what they're going to do. Like you having Dollhouse Phil and that other therapist on there who is a female therapist. you know I'd like to hear that conversation. Phil's a stand-up guy. I'm sure he would have a very good argument there. And as a doll owner myself, yeah, I do think there's definitely a helpful and a harmful argument to it. There definitely is. I do think it is an option. It is definitely, as Phil said, if in a perfect world there would not be any need for my business. It is definitely something that guys are using because they really don't have another option. I mean, the kind of women in the dating market and the things that are going on right now are things we've never seen in the history of current and human civilization. We've never seen, as far as I know, a situation like this where women just, don't really want men, and men, and, the standards of women are going up, and, men are like, well, I'm just an average guy. What can I offer? And she's just an average woman, but she wants the moon, and he can't give her the moon. And the guy that she wants, he doesn't want her because he wants a more than average woman. He wants somebody he wants the moon too. Like, nobody is like, okay, you're an average person, I'm an average person. Let's get together and have an above average life. Let's get together and have, enjoy, do some great things. Let's go, like Nick was saying. It's good to have somebody on the roller coaster with you. I love that mentality because it is a roller coaster. You have your ups and your downs. And he said, your down times are some of the strongest times in your relationships, and they're some of the most memorable times in your relationships. When you're going through a lot of struggle, that's when you bond more than ever. I mean, it can be hard, but that's what he says he remembers the most about his relationships are the hard times, or his relationship with Lady Rackets. And yeah, I mean, I do think that guys, some guys really do want to experience that. Some guys do, but other guys, they've been either burned so bad, are they just, they look at what the market's like, and they're like, I can't do that. I just want to be a regular guy. I just want to, go home, work my job, go home, maybe play my games, do stuff like that. And that's what I want to do. A lot of guys, they just want a player too. Like, they want a girl that's gonna, play games with them. Or I think there was one guy that said, I just want a son that I can, show him the games that I used to play when I was growing up, and get him kind of introduced into that. I want to have those moments with my son, and now I can't do that anymore. And that's really kind of sad to hear in some ways, where there's guys that really want to be fathers, you know. But as a doll owner, it's like, well, this is what I've got. And it's like, it's better than nothing in some ways. But, I mean, there is, you do get attached. It's just one of those things. It is what it is, you know. It's the situation we live in, and there's not really much you can do about it. But I will say that the 3D games that I've been playing, which there's hundreds of these things now, they do kind of fill the gap a little bit, you know, because you kind of get at least that simulation of the relationship and the drama and stuff like that. And of course, my co-host will come in, and he's kind of in the same path that I am, except he doesn't have a doll, doesn't want one, has no interest. But when he comes over and sees those things, he gets really invested in the story and stuff like that. He kind of gets those feelings. And of course, he's still doing the dating market. He's trying to find that right woman, and he's just striking out. It's too hard. And this guy just had, you know, kidney replacement surgery, so he's just trying to make it, you know. And texting these girls, I guess they do something for him. I don't know. But it's just a weird kind of world that we've got now, you know. And I do think it's going to get more virtual. I really do think we're going to have situations where people put on the glasses that Mark Zuckerberg's been talking about, you know, where you basically interface and interact with people through a virtual environment. I really do think they're going to push that. And I think that could be a good thing. And the only reason why is because it'll allow people to actually talk to each other again. And that's one thing we're not doing. We're not talking, we're texting. And there's so much wrong with just words, words and words. You can't get an emotion. You can't get an inflection. You don't know what somebody's actually thinking when they type something. That's like the Nick Rakita thing that I was, we were talking about on Drex's show. I read that thing that the Legal Bites woman said to him, and I'm like, well, that's probably not the best thing to say. But at the same time, my thing is, I don't know why that person, either they didn't really care about Nick or they just wrote it wrong. But the first thing that would have happened if I had written something, right, on Twitter, if I had written something on Twitter and I said, something of that nature, and I immediately got people saying, hey, whoa, Drex would say, hey, what do you mean? I would immediately clarify. I was like, hold on, that's not what I meant. Let me clarify that here, since we are on the internet and texting can carry so many different connotations. Whereas if I were to just say it, you could get my inflection, you could get my emotion. You'd say, oh, I see where you're coming from now. But you can't do that on Twitter. You can't do that on Facebook. You can't do that on all these other platforms. And that's what's missing, the interactivity. If you get people in a room and you say, okay, you got to talk, they'll talk. They'll interact. Guys will talk to girls. Girls will talk to guys. I mean, there's nothing they can do. Everybody's going to have an avatar. So, you'll get interested in people you may not be interested in physically. Like, I know that there's something for physical attraction, I'm not going to lie. But if you get to talking to somebody, and I remember this, if you get to talking to somebody and you like the conversation and you start to like the person and you have common interests and you really start to bond, you're like, hey, I kind of like this person. I might want to date them and see where this goes. People aren't really doing that much anymore. They're even trying to bring back speed dating. Hinge is trying to bring back speed dating. They need to do something, because as long as people are not physically communicating, you're never going to have, this divide is never going to heal. And again, I understand, the MGTOW, guys want to do their own thing, the market shit, everything's awful right now, and the inflation's not making anything any better for anybody. So, I get it. But I do hope eventually that maybe we have at least, some people have a permanent option, and some people, maybe at least try to go back. Maybe the dating will heal itself. Maybe the pool will heal itself over time, and people can start actually maybe trying to, get back together again. Like, I mean, I was talking to this former escort. You can take of her what you will, but she was literally saying, she wants to see a time where men and women will actually kind of stop hating on each other. And they have there's good reasons for both. There's men that Drexel will say ain't worth shit, and there's women that he said ain't worth shit. But the thing is, there are decent fucking people out there, and because of all the ain't shit people, they ain't gonna, they're not gonna meet the people that they actually might be with. There's so many guys that want to be Nick. There's so many guys that say, I just want to have like a woman like Lady Rackets. I want to have 5 kids. I want to have a successful career. I want to be happy about what I do every day and the person I come home to. And it's because of this divide, you're never going to have that. It's not you can't have that when everybody's fighting each other. So why I do really respect guys that get the doll, the robots, whatever, and that might be an option. That might be something that happens. It would be great if we got dating to mend itself, and it might not happen, but it could. I don't know. Maybe it's just the interaction, the talking that'd fix it. So I don't know what you think about all that, but
I mean, I think there's a lot to it. I don't like that the fact that men, for example, feel like they have to isolate the dolls because of social interaction.
Right.
I think there's ways that you could teach to have healthy interactions to where you don't have to worry about, or are the risks that men are considering so out there that they can't have physical interaction or sexual interaction with women? Mm-hmm. Are they actually rational or are they irrational? I could say that some are probably rational. I could say some are probably irrational.
Right.
There's a lot to unpack with that.
Yeah.
That's probably another stream because that's a lot to unpack. But I think as a whole, there's nothing wrong with wanting to have a family, to have kids. I think it's an admirable thing to do. Raising kids is difficult. It's not easy.
Yeah.
But it can be one of the most, because again, the brain's wired to reproduce. At the core function, one of the core functions of the brain, you end up finding parenting to be this amazing thing and this amazing experience, instead of just this ball of flesh that cries and shits, and you don't say fuck it and leave it on the side of the road because it's annoying. You learn to bond with it and build a relationship, and the ways that over time impacts you has the potential to do amazing things for you as a person. You can grow as a person, in a lot of ways that maybe you wouldn't have if you were not a parent. I'm not saying you can't be a good person without being a parent.
Oh yeah.
But and that kind of interaction with kids is a very useful skill.
Yeah.
I mean, like I have to do that with I work primarily with kids. It takes a lot of work sometimes with kids to get them to talk, or sometimes and again, it still freaks me out sometimes. They'll just open up to me the first session or so, just start trusting me like out the gate. And I'm like, holy shit, I don't know what I do or what I did, but I've got clients who've trusted me first session with, my mom's been beating me. My mom's been physically abusing me. And like I just met them, it's my first 20 minutes with them. Yeah. And they're willing to go that level of trust. It takes a lot.
Yeah.
And
it's a responsibility.
It's made me better as it's made me better as a professional. It's made me better as a person.
Yeah.
I think, having a healthy relationship, that's always a good thing. There's nothing wrong with that. I think if people do want to abstain from relationships, I think as long as they do it in a healthy way, in a way that's, supportive of them overall, that, I'm not just going to take this doll. Like, I think TFM would be, someone who would probably be more unhealthy than healthy, given the other aspects that go into his, I think he's created, an AI partner or something like that.
Yeah.
Is that, healthy? I think it probably, if I had like Tracy and I look at that, the therapist from another channel, I think her and I would both agree that there's a lot of concerns there.
Right.
That were, and there's probably other things that are why that's happening.
Oh yeah.
But
definitely.
I'm familiar with some of them, but just as a general rule, like why that's going on, and what you could do to change that, because I think in the long term, there's you have the potential for more psychological harm than good.
Well,
That's nothing bad against TFM. That's just a general observation.
Well, TFM, he said that he did give it the try. He never thought he was going to be connected to adult. That's one thing that he just took him by surprise. Because he's tried. He said, I've dated women that were skinny. I've dated women that were obese and worked with them. And they've all ran away. He said that he could never keep one. He always they would always go find somebody else. And I don't know. I mean, that's something that somebody with more, I guess somebody with a degree would have to figure out. That's not something that I can even think about, because of course, the situation with his mother and all that. But yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, and even Phil will say that. But I mean, it may not be the most healthy option, but that is what he's using to to deal with those issues. And I mean, it's not for me to say. It's really not for me to say on that. I mean, because I, of course, my doll and the games and things that I play might not be the most healthiest option either. But right now, considering what the situation I'm in and things like that, as far as money and the way that the dating scene has changed so much, it's probably just not a good idea for me to get involved in any kind of relationship right now. It's just, I mean. And everybody's like, oh, the right woman, but I mean, it's just, I don't even want to jump on dating sites. It's a cesspool, and you find a bunch of people that equally have a lot of different damage because they've been through a lot of stuff, and it's hard, especially when you have the hookup culture now. It's a much different age. It's not the age where you get together and be friends and find something you like. It's the age where a lot of people are just getting together to have sex and nothing else. I mean, it's like, okay, and of course, having the sex, all it does is it gets the person wanting more. Like, they want a relationship and it never happens. There's the ghosting, because they find the attractive man, and the attractive man, of course, he knows he can get all kinds of women. So he's like, why should I stick around for this girl? I got other women that are texting me and wanting to be with me. Meanwhile, the other guy that's like, oh, I wish I could get a regular woman like her, he can't do that because they don't want him. They want the more attractive, the more successful kind of guy. So, I mean, I'm from an age, again, where average people dated average people. It wasn't so unheard of for just a regular working guy to date a regular woman. She didn't look like a supermodel. She didn't come out of, I mean, she wasn't ugly, but just a decent woman that was caring and wanted to help out and be a partner, And it seems like a lot of that's missing now. And a lot of people are resorting to other means to try to fill that. And I don't know if we're ever going to get it back. Honestly, it may be too late, but I mean, it's just, yeah, again, that's a whole nother stream. I guess I can be on your show one day and kind of talk about that sort of thing. But I'm gonna get you out with this one last question. After everything that you hear, from clients and everything else like that, and your day to day, just hearing these things that most people couldn't process, how do you actually manage to unwind and get all this burden off your shoulders? What do you do that that makes it so you can continue doing this and continue hearing these kinds of things? Because some people would break if they heard that all the time. But
burnout's a pretty big issue in the field. It can happen. Mm-hmm. For me, the way I look at it is I try to focus. One, I have my coping mechanisms. One of them being my YouTube channel.
Sure.
I have definitely, in the month of July, I put in more hours than I've ever worked in my life in a single month, and I have proof that it saved someone's life. But it was worth it because of what the outcome was. And every damn day of that month, I was dragging hard. There were some 16, 17-hour days. I worked more days than I was supposed to. I'm salaried in that position, right? That's why I have a job interview tomorrow for hopefully a little bit better position with a bit better salary.
Oh, wow.
But, yeah, so, because like when I went from private practice to the current place, it was a cut about in half of what I was making. Because I was being paid by the hour in private practice, and the place I went after, that's about half, and it was salaried, per same paycheck every 2 weeks, basically. And it's great work. It's somewhat stressful, different environment. It definitely gave me more experience in the field, pushed me in professionally than I've ever been. I got to meet clients that as kids, were some of the most intelligent people that I've ever met, as far as youth go. People who have unfortunate histories that they were ending, by the time they left my care, were going from wanting to end their life to thinking that they could have something to live for. And so I take those small wins and use those as a way to, because it's not necessarily me that did anything. I always tell my clients, you're the one who does the work. But I take those wins, and those are the things make me okay to get up in the morning and go to work. Like I don't drag myself out of bed and go, oh, I have to go to work today. I love going to work. Regardless of what I get paid, I love going to work. And the day that happens is I won't work in this field. But the day it's not that, the day I'm dragging my ass out of bed to go to work, and it's like I really don't want to go to work today, I won't work in this field again. Because that's how I believe that it should be looked at. Because there's just too much at stake. I hate to say it, and I don't mean to put down the other people in my office.
Right.
But had I not done what I did, had I not been there, the amount of hours I was, the fact that they brought in a client who wasn't suitable for our environment, that I have no control over who comes into the facility.
Sure.
It was a much higher need client than we should have been able to take on. We could not get them out of there fast enough, so they spent like 5 or 6 weeks with us. And had I not done what I did, we would have had a body on the floor.
Yeah.
That they would have left. The kid would have left in a body bag and not walked out. And that scares me because I see the complacency in some of the other staff and the issues that were going on that I had to escalate and had caused some issues. Basically, I'll fill you in behind the scenes on that one, but that to me was worth the effort, even though it caused some issues with my home life because I was working so much, and I wasn't getting paid overtime for it. But I wasn't doing it for the overtime. I was doing it for my clients, to make sure my clients were okay. Because in that 1 month, a client got raped. Another client came close to suicide on more than one occasion. Had severe dissociative episodes on more than one occasion. Like, do I want to, I don't want to be in a position where I just go, oh, they'll be okay. I'll see them tomorrow. Yeah. I don't leave. My philosophy is I don't leave the building until I feel everyone's in an okay place for the night, or for the day, or whatever time it is. And so, for me, my coping mechanisms are probably not the best. Some people drink. Some people, gamble. Some people have hobbies, video games, and I do the same. I've got 3D printing as a hobby of mine. It's a stress reliever for me. But to me, the thing that motivates me is, especially working with young people, is they have the opportunity to not, at an early age, make some changes that will forever put them in a better direction, and that they're not beyond help. Not that I think adults aren't beyond help, but kids, I believe I relate better to, I get rapport better with, and the changes I can make in the time frame that maybe other therapists would have, I've made significantly better changes, I think, compared to some other people who would handle situations differently than I would. Not to say that their methods are worse or better than mine. I just know that when I put things in place with my clients, they work, and I don't say this as a conceited thing, but I have yet to have a client ever take true issue with my therapy. To say your therapy caused harm, that you were a bad therapist, that you weren't trustworthy, never. And I'm hoping to continue that track record because it means I'm doing something right. As long as if my client can trust me, they can know that if something's not wrong, not right, they can talk to me. That it, they need the help, that they can pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I'm not doing okay. Can I talk to you? That I'll take the phone call and not just be blown off.
Yeah.
Does it take out of my day? Sure, but you don't get into this field for, it's not necessarily always it's decent money. If you do like private practice, you can clear six figures if you do it right.
Oh, sure.
But or you can gross six figures, maybe clear a little bit less than that in a private practice, doing certain types of billing and certain types of specialties. Mm-hmm. But the average salary is somewhere between 50 to 70-ish.
Yeah.
For independent licensing, for independent licensed therapists.
Yeah.
And so you can make good money, whether you work for the government, you private practice, work for an agency. So it's not bad money.
Oh, yeah.
You do it because there's more to it.
Yeah.
Like I took the pay cut job, not just because it was the first job I could get, but because I was looking for a bit of a challenge. I wanted a different environment. And in the end of the day, even with everything that went down, I'm glad I got fired because I saved someone's life.
Right.
So I can be okay with what happened last year because of what happened. I know the impacts that I've made in the last, what's October now? August, September, last 15 months. Yeah. The impacts I've done, even though I was out of work for a period, I'm okay. And I can go home every day and be okay for the most part. Some days are tougher than others. Some people tell you shit that, oof, it's really hard to deal with, or not necessarily it's like heavy, it's just tricky. Like, how do I work within this framework? I'm limited on what I can do or what I can say or what topics can be approached without pushing the boundaries too far with like a parent that, maybe bought in now, but if I push this too far at the beginning, they may no longer be bought into participating. So it's like a dance a little bit. You gotta, take each day each session, each whether it's daily or weekly, however you meet with the client in a way that is best suited for them. And I love the challenge because there's no day that is exactly the same.
Right.
I never go to work and have the exact same day ever.
Wow.
It's not like standing behind a cash register and you just ring shit up, you stock the shelves.
Yeah.
You go in, someone walks in the door, even though it's the same client, you've met with them for weeks or months, depending on the environment, they can come in with an issue you've never dealt with. Right. When I dealt with that client with the dissociative episode, where they had a dissociative episode because of a trauma trigger, they had no idea really who they were, where they were, and I had to reground them to where they actually were. I had never dealt with that. And the entire time I'm flying by the seat of my pants. I was scared shitless I was going to make a mistake. And I pulled it off somehow. Got yelled at for being there so late, even though had I not been there, shit would have gone south. But that's a bitch fest on another day. But
yeah.
Basically, I make my work, even though it's not necessarily the most healthy thing. My work is almost its own self-care thing because I get self-care knowing that I'm doing good work to help people. Absolutely. So as long as I'm doing good work to help people, whether they change or not, because the change is on them. But when I build the rapport and the relationships I do with my clients, the changes do happen. Most of them try to make changes or want to make changes. Not everyone does,
right?
But the good chunk that do, I'm okay because I know I put in my effort and they took their part in. Right. I can lead the horse to water, but I can't make them drink.
Absolutely.
And so that's probably the hardest part of being a therapist is I can't force change.
Right.
And then the other realization of that is even if I could force change, that forcing change isn't the way that actually helps the person.
Right.
So it's a little bit of a philosophy of like the practice of therapy is the way I look at it. Because if I force the change, then you haven't really learned anything.
Right.
It's on you to process the information and recognize why it's important and why it's beneficial. So,
Right.
I know there's someone in here. I don't know if they have a question before we finish up, but
Okay.
listening, I didn't know if they.
Well, no, I don't see any. They were. Yeah, the guy that's in, he said he doesn't quite have one. We've answered everything he wanted to say. But there will.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, don't worry. There's going to be. I'll have this on my platforms, and people will definitely check it out. My BitChute does the best. That's the one that most people are watching. I'm not sure why. It's just I don't have as many subscribers, but I have more views. Like I don't know. People don't like to subscribe, but they like to watch. I don't know how that works. But anyway, yeah, I'll have it on all the platforms. Unless you don't want me to put this on YouTube. Are you okay with this one on YouTube? That's completely up to you.
Man, at this point, I quit Karen. I don't want the Karens to dictate what I do.
Okay. All
so
right.
Go nuts. Put it wherever you want, man.
Okay.
Yeah, if anyone takes issue with what I've said, I haven't said anything illegal. I haven't broken or violated client confidentiality because no one's name can be tied back to what I just said.
Right.
So there's nothing I did. If you don't like the take, go nuts. I don't fucking care at this point. Absolutely. I'm here to help people in the way that I think is best. And the Karen incident, dealing with the Karens was its own learning experience. So you take it's your interview, man. You want to put it up on any platform, you put it up where you want to.
Okay, great.
I'll support that.
Okay,
so.
And I'll leave off with this one thing. I do definitely want to be on your show. I had a series of anxiety episodes around the same time last year. This same time, but last year. And they're very deep. They changed who I was as a person. And it's something that I'd really like to talk about on your show. That we could probably have multiple therapists. But this is something... Yeah, because there's a couple issues, I kind of just want some guidance to see what in the world I should, because they did change me a lot as a person. I've never had, it was caused by a job. Basically, the only thing I can say just very shortly is they had me working overnights, and I'd never worked overnights before in my life after 30-something years. And my body could not handle it. I was not emotional, my nerves weren't capable of doing it. So, and some people cannot work overnights. It messes with their circadian rhythm. And it was causing horrible anxiety problems. And it got so bad that basically I was diagnosed with horrible acid reflux. And I also had an epididymal cyst because of that, which I've been dealing with. A bunch of health problems just started. And I'm on the other side of that somewhat. I still have anxiety, issues from time to time, especially if I've had a lot of caffeine. Sometimes it will get pretty bad. But I've learned to deal with it. Even sometimes you get the bad thoughts, but you work with it, I've always figured, working with it. And usually if I just, go through the motions, it goes away. But it is definitely something that happened and affected me. And I'd like to talk more about that on your show, exactly how it started, what I was going through, the visions I was having. It was I've never experienced anything that horrifying in my life. It was the most traumatic experience I think I've had.
Yeah, I'm sure we could set something up.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, we'll definitely talk about that. But all right, Ken, let me go on ahead and get you out of here. Go shill yourself, and then we'll get you out.
What was that?
Go shill yourself. Shill yourself. Your channel, all that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you can find me on YouTube at youtube.com/Ken's Counseling Couch. My locals, if you want to follow me over there to get updates on when I'm streaming. You don't have to pay anything. Just subscribe to get the updates. That's kenscounselingcouch.locals.com, or the easy way is just go to supportken.com to get to my locals page. Follow me on, subscribe to me on Rumble so I can start streaming on Rumble too. It's Ken's Counseling Couch, and I also have an Odyssey. That's Ken's Counseling Couch. I primarily, and I have a Discord you can join, $5 a month if you join the locals. Certain people get access. A couple of people who aren't her guests have access who don't pay, but that's to keep some of the riffraff out. Because I've dealt with, I don't think the Karens would pay to get access to my Discord. So
no, they won't.
I don't think they care that. I don't think they care that much. So, but no, man.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then don't forget about the OnlyFans, where you're trying to make sure to get the pictures of the big black couches. You know, we've got to, as soon as we get you verified.
If they would, they won't verify. It's been a year. They won't verify me. I've tried more than once, and they won't verify me.
Well, I'll tell you, I tried because, and you know what? I posted a video of what I was going to do, which was play adult games. I figured it's OnlyFans. Why can't I play adult games on there and get money for it, you know? And they just would not let me do it. I tried everything. They said, we can't verify your ID. What do you mean? I've given it to you like 18 different times. I've taken so many pictures.
Their rules are weird.
Oh, God.
I've kind of given up on it. If I decide to go with the meme, I'll probably just do a different platform and see if they'll verify me on a different platform. So.
Oh, yeah, there's some other ones. But, all right, I'm going to go ahead and get you out of here. Thanks so much for being a part of this. And this is the Grim Lord and Ken Jennings, and we're out for Grim Interviews. We'll see you next time.